This is me. Who the hell am I and why should you listen to me? I've done a few things. Apparently I test really well on certifications. Been CEO of a few consulting firms. Started a few of those, started some nonprofits, principal investigator for DOE. One of the original architects of the famous NERC-CIP standards, including the very first NERC-CIP auditor in the country. For those of you that live in the electric space, I wrote parts of 5, 7, 8, and 9. If you don't like those, too bad. Don't like the other ones, let the other people know. But what else? Yeah, a whole bunch of stuff. So I've been around the block, a lot of it in the OT space, ICS space, various different sectors, primarily electric, but a lot of experience in water, wastewater, chemical, mining, manufacturing, oil and gas, and starting to get a little bit into the fun areas of aviation and automobiles, which is cool. Okay, who do I work for? I am the CEO of Ampere Industrial Security. We just do pure services, industrial security consulting. That's it. Enough sales pitch. Let's talk about other stuff. Okay, so we're talking about borrowing security from operations. So who here from the OT space, operation space? Any hands? Couple? All right. I assume the rest of you are from the IT side, which is fine, because I want to help you learn some of our world as well, and we'll get to make fun of each other. So one of the things I want to make sure everybody understands, even if you're in the OT space, is OT is on the menu. This used to not be the case. It used to be that if you, for example, hacked some kind of critical infrastructure, there was this expectation that some physical kinetic response, like bombs or boots, would show up on your door. Because this was actually stated in like NATO documents and other international warfare situations. So the message was clear. You mess with infrastructure, we're coming at you. We found that that's kind of not the case, because situations like Ukraine, yeah, they had their entire distribution grid hacked in the middle of winter. And then they did it again. Now, granted, Russia invaded Ukraine and the situation got different, but we're seeing this actually happen in other places where infrastructure is getting hacked. In some cases, it's not clear on attribution, and attribution is hard. I get that. But basically what they figured out is, okay, they're not going to send bombs to my front door, so okay, OT's on the menu. Let's go. Let's get this going. Other things like ransomware, Mark did a great job today, and he stole some of my thunder because of some of the things you'll see in the slides Mark talked about. I'll go into some more detail, but ransomware is an issue, right? This is not just an IT, OT issue. This is an issue for everyone because it's affecting all of our systems. One of the things I want to talk about is your adversaries, much like Mark's, they don't, to talk this morning, they don't play by the rules. They don't care if you have a policy. They don't care if you have the no hacking sign up on the network. None of that matters, right? They have three things you don't. They have people, they have money, and they have time. And anybody in this room that has all three of those things, I want to work for you, because nobody has that. They have, in some cases, almost unlimited resources, believe it or not, and very significant motivators. If you fail at your job, pow, or your family. So there's some differences of models in other sectors and other spaces from the criminal side or the nation state side. Some interesting ways to show that IT is on the menu. Just take a look at ICS-AP if you haven't seen this and you're in the ICS space. Fantastic set of dashboards to just give you a really crafty way to slice and dice what is vulnerable out there in ways that you've never been able to see before. And it really gives you a kind of a visceral response in terms of, holy shit, there's a lot of vulnerable stuff out there in the world. It really brings it home. And then, of course, the KEV list, the known exploited vulnerabilities list from CISA. I like CISA. Everyone, they're doing good stuff. Best thing they've done so far, orders of magnitude. This is the known exploited vulnerabilities list. If you're wondering what the heck you should patch next, that stuff, because it's not just it may get hacked. No, it's actively being hacked right now. So get busy. Go patch it. Physical threats are on the rise. We're seeing a lot of this even here in this country, of course, other places as well. And yeah, there's still a lot of hype and a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt around this in terms of what's possible, what's happening, what's not happening. So you kind of still have to sift through to get to the reality. So in the OT space, fragile systems kind of set the bar. So you think of like a high watermark or a low watermark in some cases. There are some things that you don't want to ping in our world. Like literally a ping will cause it to hang. I had a situation for a utility in the far north, and basically someone ran just a ping sweep, just to see what was on the network. took out a substation, a major substation. So we got this interesting call. They said, all right, get the junior guy, put him in a snowcat, give him a thermos full of soup. He's got a 6-hour ride in the snow to go dig out the door in the substation and physically walk up and power cycle the device to get it to come back on. That is a situation we're dealing with in the OT space. I see some heads nodding. People have experienced similar situations. We have things like really weird and specialized administrative software that you think no one else has. Yeah, your attackers have it. It's not just you that has that special admin software to log into the thing using some special protocol. We have what we call Infiniday vulnerabilities. This is stuff that's never, ever going to get patched. Ever. And it's got probably originally 20, 30-year lifespan, and we're going to keep breathing life into that dinosaur for 20 more years, so it's got like a 50, 70-year lifespan. So as far as you're going to live, it's going to be vulnerable, and it's likely not going to get replaced because it's doing its job and doing it well. Latency matters. We've talked about some of these things it's getting better because our networks are getting better and we're using fiber and we have better options, but there are systems where if they don't get that polling cycle within some number of milliseconds, things go bad. Flat networks, just not segmented. When you've got your operations and somebody with an Exchange server and an internet connection all in one environment, bad idea. And then, of course, as I mentioned, these things are really designed for a really, really long lifespan. They're not meant to get a 3-year, 5-year vintage cycle like IT. They're meant to be installed and run every day, 367, 365, 7 days a week, nonstop, for the entire lifespan of the device. And you might get a window during an outage to check on it. That's about it. Okay, so some mythical OT protections that we've talked about in the OT space. Like I go in and say, oh, you probably have some security issues. Oh, no, we got air gaps. I'm like, yeah, bullshit. You have no air gap. It's like, show me where the firewall is. Oh, it's right there. Okay, that's not an air gap, that's a firewall. Air gap means air, literally air between the networks. Better yet, concrete. Oh, well, we're using serial protocols. It's like nobody can hack that. I know several of you in the room that cut through serial like a hot knife through butter. So serial is no protection whatsoever. It's just another protocol, and half the time they just wrap it in IP anyway. So serial is not anything. Obscurity, well, I'm sorry, every manual to every control system is on the internet and translated in every language. There is no such thing as obscurity, period. It doesn't exist. Proprietary, okay, big deal. Same thing as obscurity. It's old. No one knows how to use it anymore. Okay, yeah, the 3 engineers in a basement that wrote it, well, 2 of them are dead, but there's still something, and it was written with some language. We can still figure it out. Age does not buy you much at all. Complexity as well, that's basically just means you have bigger problems to solve. Yes, it's complex. Again, we have every manual. Everything that's already been done was documented somewhere, and it's now available on the internet, or you can just ask ChatGPT to simplify it for you. Redundancy. This is a big one. It's like, well, we've got 10 of those. We don't care what happens to one. Common mode failure. If I can hack 1 of 10 and they're identical, I just hacked all 10. Redundancy doesn't buy you much unless it's redundancy and diversity. Now, those 2 things matter. But just 10 of the same thing doesn't really buy you much. If you're driving down a really bad place and you've got 1 spare, the problem that took out 1 tire is probably going to take out your spare too. Similar issue. And then, of course, well, it would take an engineer with this kind of experience to do that. Not anymore. Again, ChatGPT. That's just one way to solve some of this engineer experience issue. Now, the flip side, when we have IT and OT in the mix, we saw that OT is not just IT with a hard hat. Okay, on the IT side, we have all right, step away from the SCADAs. IT is here to save the day. That's a common situation we see where IT comes in, and in some cases they're very experienced at what they do. But in the operations world, it's a different situation. Much slower, much more careful, much more practiced, stepwise. You can't just, for example, machines. Have you tried turning it off and back on again? You can't use Nmap, as I mentioned. Same things like simple ping sweeps can take these devices out. And yeah, we do run a lot of Windows XP. Yeah, and I've even seen like NT. And I saw DOS 2.2 on an 8.5-inch floppy. Serious. Yeah, some of our stuff is that old. Yeet it to production. No, not in our world. You test everything before it goes into production, preferably. And I've seen some engineers that get a little crafty with that, but it's almost always tested, if not in a QAS, in some test environment, in FAT, in SAT. We have this long testing process before things make it into our environment. And then there's this question of why doesn't it speak IP? I don't know how to do anything with this. It's all serial or it's all DEC alpha or whatever. And then of course, where is your neckbeard? IT prowess in the OT space, most of them are engineers and they know their systems well. And they know enough about that system to get it to operate every day, 365, very, very well. But they're not going to replace you with a single line of shellcode. That's not their expertise. So they don't have to have the neckbeard. This is their job. Okay, so I'm going to talk about some operational practices that we live in the OT space or in the operations space, not just the operational technology space, and how you can apply these in the security world. So thinking about security from an operational mindset. And I'm hoping this resonates across both sides of OT and IT. Predictive maintenance. This is different than preventive maintenance because now you're trying to predict when something might need to be maintained outside of a maintenance window. So this is actually basically just sensing and monitoring. Do you know enough about your environment to know something may need help in the future? It's starting to fail. We're seeing that it's going to fail before you think it's going to fail. In the IT side, think about things like backplanes and fans and proc speeds. You're using this kind of stuff already at a server or workstation level, but this is in a bigger scope in terms of an OT environment. And then, of course, the analytics to do that. Automation, automate as much as you can. You still need people, but automate, automate, automate. Because our jobs are just getting more and more complex, and we have to have something to do that for us. In the OT space, we used to have people literally turning knobs and wrenches and dials, and we don't do that anymore. We have machines that do that for us now. So we can click on a screen, on an icon, and something happens in the field. Breaker opens, valve moves, actuator changes, stuff like that. So automation is key. Main thing is it's scalable. Human action isn't. Quality assurance, this should resonate with everybody. I mean, the system should operate at a quality level, not just an operational level. So what do you expect in terms of quality? And then samples and measures. This doesn't just mean quality of the things. It means quality of your process, quality of your security program. You have to think of the quality mindset all the way through the whole thing. Maintenance operations. Now, preventive maintenance is this thing typically fails what's called a mean time between failures. It typically fails every 10 years under these conditions, so we go maintain it at 9 just to see, or we maintain it more frequently to make sure that it can live its full 10 years. That's different. Same thing, but what goes into this is things like asset management. We just had a talk about asset management in the previous section in this room. So if you don't know what you have, then you can't protect it. Marty talked about that today. But part about this, I want to make sure, at least from the OT space, half the time, this doesn't change that much. So it's really not that hard to do asset management because we're not changing out a whole bunch of stuff all the time on a frequent basis. Typically when a system is designed, it doesn't change a lot over the lifespan of that system. Things kind of get added on outside it, or it talks to new systems maybe to get data from that, but it doesn't really change that much. This shouldn't be that hard. It actually really isn't. And worst case, just do the asset management for the really important stuff. You know what that is. It's not like mystery. Scheduled inspections and calibration, and even for preventive maintenance, things like threat hunting, believe it or not, fall into this category of preventive maintenance. Looking for problems that may be existing in your environment in advance on a regularly scheduled basis. Not just because you think something might be happening. Don't trust your gut. Don't trust your gut on when your stuff is going to fail. Just go check. Go find out. Root cause analysis, the operations world is really, really good at this. Why did it fail? And don't just guess. There's like a whole science and literal degrees dedicated to root cause analysis in the operations world because people usually die. Let's be real, right? So when you do root cause analysis in this world, we take it very seriously and make it very thorough. If you know what the problems are and how they happened, in theory, you can keep them from happening again or minimize the potential that they will. To help you with this, things like analyzing failures, of course, doing lessons learned, that's kind of key, but logging and auditing. If you don't know what you have and you're not logging and auditing from those things, you won't know anyway, so it's not really going to do you much. And of course, spare parts management, availability of essential parts, redundancy in HA. There's been supply chain issues like crazy lately, so we've run into this kind of thing. No one really predicted that COVID would cause this weird chip shortage and hardware shortage. But in the OT space, we didn't care because we were already ready. We planned for this under what's called an all hazards approach. We didn't wait for a market issue to create it. We know we need these things just because. So building that into your kind of an operational mindset, doesn't matter what the hazard is. Just be ready for it. Operations, support operations, things like supply chain management, yes. Even in the OT space, we look at things like a software development lifecycle. In some cases, there's not a lot of software, it's like ladder logic, but we still worry about those things. Much more concern now going into things like software bill of materials, hardware bill of materials, and no, that's not the F-bomb you think it is, it's a firmware bill of materials. And then, of course, made in. I mean, let's be real. Made in right now is more like assembled in, because chipsets and other components are really made everywhere, and they're assembled in the place that's got the sticker on it that says made in. So that's just understand what that means. And some companies actually go to the level of really checking out chipsets to the point of like unspooling them and x-raying them before they put them on your boards. So knowing what is inside your stuff is important and getting more and more important by the day. Customer support. This is something that, believe it or not, in operations is a big deal because you're making a product for somebody. Now, think about this from a security perspective. You have security customers. You are a service to the organization. You have internal people you have to satisfy and external people you have to satisfy. If you're not built to provide that information out, showing the value of your work is hard. Getting money to do more work is hard. So that's more of a marketing situation in some cases, or answering questions when people come and ask, like regulators or bosses. Vendor management, yeah, do things like risk assessments, for example. Things like availability, timeliness, consistency are key when it comes to vendor management. There's been a lot of talks on this. I won't dwell on it too much, but if you don't think about these things from a security aspect as well, it's going to be really challenging to continue to maintain the security operation from a support perspective. Okay, technical operations. Technology adoption, everything we buy today is digital, and we don't have analog stuff anymore, right? You can't go out and buy analog equipment unless you like get it on eBay. That's pretty much the only place to get analog stuff nowadays. So what you buy, what used to be like an analog piece of equipment, electromechanical, for example, or physical, now there's a digital one. It's got a chipset, which means it can be hacked, where beforehand you had to physically go put a wrench in it to cause problems. So this kind of technology adoption will definitely cause disruption, and it'll do it both on IT and OT. And as Mark said earlier, you know, you can tap the brakes, or you can kind of saddle up next to it and make friends and teach it good manners, you know? So this will be a significant divergence from the legacy environment, especially in the OT space, because we've got stuff that's like, our RTUs used to be like the size of a refrigerator. And now the ones look like an iPhone in terms of their size and their complexity, and they can do a whole bunch more stuff. One of the big things about that is you have to have people that can work on that breadth of technology, right? The old stuff and the new stuff, because the old stuff will be there for a long time, as we talked about, and the only stuff you can buy now is the new stuff. So the skills and training part of this is actually your most difficult challenge. Configuration management. If you're not already doing this, then that's a problem, because usually when something goes wrong, if you're doing the predictive and preventive maintenance stuff right, it's because somebody changed something. It's not because the equipment failed. Usually it's somebody did something. So those things are important, both system baselines of the system and network baselines of your network. This will also help with things like asset management and other things. Testing, of course, I mentioned that testing is key. Data management, this will be a bigger and bigger problem going forward. As I mentioned, if everything is digital, that means everything is connected. So now you have thousands more data streams coming out of your operational environment, where before you didn't, because everything has a connection. Where do you put all that data? I don't know anybody in an industrial space that has designed a data center to hold all this. They want it because it's data about their operations. They can get everything from efficiencies and many other things from that data, but they can also take that data and refine it into data products and sell the data products too. So since data is money, as much as the product is money, this data management thing will be a very significant issue. Not the least of which is if you can't hold it, it's going to go to someone's cloud. Okay? Are you basing your operational analytics on your data in someone else's cloud? And does that analytical product come back into your operational feedback loop and affect operations? Because it's now out of your custody for a while, and then comes back in through some analytical stream. So these are going to be significant challenges to think about from a security perspective and an operational perspective. Safety. Safety is key. Actually, it's the most important part of what we do. Most of the operational folks, we've all got a hard hat and boots, high-vis vest. We know what this is like, and usually we start every single meeting with a safety minute. Safe operating procedures, hazard notice inspection operations. Approaching security with a safety mindset is critical in the OT space, because anything you do can literally cause people to die if you do it wrong. That is not a joke. That's not an exaggeration. That's a reality. The weird thing is flipping this the other way around. Take that safety mindset that it's everyone's job. It's not just someone's job. Hey, you do security, so you do all the security now. Nobody in the operational space says that about safety. Every single person knows it's also their job as safety, so that no one gets hurt. If you turn that around so that everyone thinks security is also their job, same messaging, same style of approach, you can use that same safety vehicle that you've used over the years in the operational space to promote security at the same time. It's actually very effective. Okay, last one on this is regulation. There isn't a single industrial area I've ever been in that has no regulation. They've all got something, whether minimum it's OSHA. But there's a ton of other regulations they've all got to deal with. Audits and inspections are part of your job. If you are designing security solutions that don't have like regulatory outputs, you're doing it wrong. It's not just about making it secure. You have to make it secure and compliant in a way that an auditor can come in and look at it and say, all right, you're good. Why? Because they'll shut you down if you don't. Now, a hacker can come take over your operation and take you out, or a regulator can walk in with a clipboard and take you out. They're both an equal threat to your operation. You have to factor this into your day job as part of what you do. So any kind of external review, I don't care if it's an auditor with a clipboard, your next problem is going to be things like you don't get insurance because you're not doing the right thing. If you didn't put in sprinkler systems, if you didn't design the building to code, if you don't have fire extinguishers and regular inspections from the fire marshal, you will not get fire insurance. Insurance people are not stupid. They don't lose money. The house always wins. If you're not doing security right, you will not get insurance, period. They will deny your claim. They'll charge you too much. It's just it's inevitability. So this is another one of your external parties you got to deal with. M&A activity. That's actually a significant part of my job, is when somebody wants to go buy a plant, we go in and assess the plant's security and compliance and come back with a report. And they're like, wow, this sucks. We're taking the price down a couple of million. And they have no choice. It's like a home inspection in reality. Before you buy the house, the inspector comes in and says, whoa, termites. Down goes the price. Same thing in M&A. And then, of course, everything from shareholders, market, and believe it or not, even competitors will do comparisons. Okay, so the new normal, I got Colonial Pipeline up here, I got Norsk Hydro, and I've got Clorox. We just heard about Clorox this morning as well. 3 quick examples. Colonial Pipeline had to shut down the OT operations because they didn't quite understand the dependencies between OT and IT when they got hit with ransomware. It was just a matter of time before OT really got severely impacted. So as odd as it sounds, very smart decision. Now, it was a smart decision for the situation that they were in. Shame on them for being in that situation. Different discussion. They should know the dependencies between OT and IT so that they can, what we call, intelligently island off their operations. So if you can island off operations and they can continue to run, that's a resilient organization. You should design, from an architecture perspective, crumple zones in your network. Shear away engine and drivetrain. You should be able to go into turtle mode and clamp down the shell and wait for the danger to pass, peek out, all cool? All right, we can resume and continue going. Next example is Norsk Hydro. Actually a classic example of how to get this right. They were hit with ransomware. They're a global aluminum operation. They basically went to manual because they could. Now that is smart. That's designing engineering and resilience into your operation. Problem, they couldn't bill. All kinds of other business problems happened, but they still shipped aluminum and they still met orders. And at the same time, they were extremely transparent about the problem. So this company could have lost millions or billions of dollars. The way they handled this massive attack on their operation, their stock price went up because they were transparent about how they did it. So it's not what happens, it's how you handle it. A classic case in incident response, communications, and manual operations. Clorox, really bad example. Filed like 7 or 8 times now on their 8K to adjust. Don't be Clorox. And it took them a long time to disclose what happened as well. So this is now the new normal of you have to report this to the SEC if you're a publicly traded company. And that's just where it starts. It's going to get more and more invasive in terms of when you have an incident. CIRCIA is another one. If you're an infrastructure organization, you'll be reporting to DHS. So it seems like no matter what happens, when it comes to an incident, they want to know what the heck's going on in your operation. If you can't do this and do it well and be transparent like Norsk Hydro, you're going to fail massively in all kinds of areas, not the least of which will be your stock price. Okay, so engineering versus security. I get this a lot in the OT space. When we're dealing with engineers, brilliant people. I mean, they design our world, and our world operates amazingly because of our engineers. And we have this conversation of, should we secure it or should we just engineer it better? And the answer is yes, yes we should. That's the answer. So the discussion comes down to, with engineering, you're dealing with physics. You're dealing with Mother Nature. And Mother Nature can be really harsh, but she's not malicious. There's no malice, there's no intent to harm. It just does its thing. And it's fairly predictable because it's physics. It's really hard to predict humans and their behavior and their motivations and their, political alignment or motivation because of some crime operator or religious belief or whatever, right? There's all kinds of reasons. But that part that makes everything different is you can design it as good as you possibly can, and then you have to factor in malice. What if someone intentionally tried to harm this system, knowing everything you know as an engineer? Okay, we have what's called cyber-informed engineering. This is kind of the culmination of lots of different disciplines come together, and it's fantastic. So if you don't know about it, go check it out. CIE, it's done primarily out of Idaho National Labs, but there's some really brilliant minds working on this, some good friends working on it. But think about it as basically analog and digital controls. One of the best examples is, there was recently a rumored attack on a water system in Oldsmar, Florida. Someone went in and changed the set point, which basically means the amount of chlorine that could enter into the system. And let's say the typical amount of chlorine is about 0.1 parts per million. We'll just arbitrarily pick a number. They changed it to like 1 billion parts per million. Danger. Way too much chlorine. People dying everywhere in the system. Right. The pipe that delivers the chlorine to the water system is so tiny by design that even if you dumped a freaking tanker on the other end, it's not going to deliver the chlorine to the system. Cyber-informed engineering. We built it in such a way that, in theory, we could catch the attack of changing the set points, which we did. But even if you tried to attack it, the system just won't do that physically. It can't. So there are ways to design these systems, both analog and digital, so that they're basically kind of process-focused or pre-engineered to get through a system like that or a problem like that. That's cyber-informed engineering. It's awesome. Okay, so for both sides to get together well and actually have a good conversation, a culture shift is necessary. Typically, thank you for coming, brother. All right. Egos is the biggest problem I see. And I'll be honest about it. Everybody's got an ego, and everybody is really good at what they do, and that's the hardest part. Because most of the time, all sides, engineering, whether it's IT, whether it's OT, whether it's engineering, whether it's management, whether it's an external regulator, that's the biggest problem. We just got to get some of that stuff down. So if you run into that, that's okay. Just put up with it. But don't fight back with ego, because you're just going to make it even worse. So we have to take this down. Respect, indifference. Everybody is doing a damn good job at what they do. So when IT people come to help, that's okay. Talk to them. Help them understand what's going on in your world. Take them to coffee. Take them out for a beer. Whatever it is. But you got to take down those walls and actually want to have the conversation. Yes, you know a lot about your world. That doesn't mean you have to force everyone else to know that. That's okay. This is a necessary symbiosis. It was talked a little bit about this morning. More and more organizations are blending their OT and their IT. And that's not because it's like some new trend in HR. It's because technology that used to be traditionally IT is now working its way into the OT space because we want to buy one device that does a bunch of stuff. And since we're buying it all digital anyway, you might as well buy that stuff. And that's what the vendors are offering. So there's this gravity going toward what I call just T. It's not OT, it's not IT, it's just technology, right? So there's this big space in the Venn diagram
of technology between these two worlds, and that means IT, OT have to work together. And we've heard this a million times, and it feels like I've been banging a dead drum. But in reality, we don't have a choice. We're going to end up working on the same stuff anyway, and we're going to meet butt heads in the middle. We might as well have a beer and be cool to each other. So incidents do usually start in IT for now, and that's primarily because for those that at least have segmented networks, not everyone does, the OT stuff is often some, harder to get to space, firewalled off in theory. We're starting to connect everything in the IIoT, IoT, XOT space to the internet directly, like right on the internet. So a bunch of this stuff is going away, and we're entering into a state of what's kind of called like boundarylessness. And if that's the case, then all the T that's out there, we're going to have to figure it out all together, because it's not going to be just OT folks showing up for the IoT stuff connected to the internet, because that's typically a threat they're not used to looking at. Criticality and diligence, the more critical the system, the more diligent you're going to have to be about everything you do. So when you're thinking about, we work on, if you've done a business impact assessment, you know how important things like your HR system or your finance system or your billing system, your email environment, those are critical operations for the business side. Typically, you're really careful before you make changes in there. In the OT space, it's like add a couple of zeros on the level of diligence you have to do there. So just know that it's time to slow down, be super careful in your steps, talk about it, test it before you do anything there. And actually, that's the expectation. And the last piece is, on this one in terms of translation, you are now going to be required to translate what you do from a security perspective externally, as I mentioned, to all those external parties. So we'll call it regulation, but everything from board members are getting smarter. They're actually getting educated on security and asking smart questions, and not just asking ChatGPT, and if you gave them some answer, they wouldn't know what you said. They're actually going out and getting educated. How do I know this? Because I teach some of the classes that they're in. They're there. They're not just guessing anymore. They're actually asking smart, thoughtful questions, and they understand the answers. And that's just your board. We also teach regulators the same class. So all of the different regulators out there are actually getting smart as well. So you can't just talk a bunch of security mumbo jumbo at them and they'll go away. Think, oh crap, I have no idea what that person said. It sounds important. Now it is, oh, I get it. Follow on question. Like, oh shit, I wasn't prepared for that. Which ones? I mean, the NERC SIP auditors? Yeah. No, I teach that class too. They are getting smarter, believe it or not, they actually are getting better. It's not perfect, but it used to be that you could just say security, and they're like, ooh, witchcraft, voodoo, sheep knuckle bones, chicken feet. I don't get it. Now they'll actually have follow-on questions. You're like, crap, I didn't think you knew that much. Okay, let's take it to the next level. So they actually are getting much, much, much smarter. So basically, at all levels, IT, OT, externally, the game is upped significantly. So this is a much different situation. Clicky, clicky, where am I clicking? Can someone advance the slide? You guys got it back there? Okay. One of my favorite ones, there is no I or O in team. This is the rah-rah speech. Get off your horse and work together. So things like org structures, I mean, I know there's still some organizations that they're stuck in 1985 and they've got like the CIO reporting to the CFO. No, we have matrixed organizations now. There's dotted lines. There's all kinds of crafty ways. Just start figuring out how to work together. Worst case, if you want to learn about OT or you want to learn about IT or you want to learn about engineering, go get a beer. Go get a cup of coffee. Go have lunch. You'd be surprised just by being cool. They'll tell you what you want to know. You would make really good friends, and when things go bad, they want to call you because they trust you on either side, just because you took a moment to be cool and make friends. Things like business impact assessments, if you don't know what's important, you got to start with asset inventory, of course, but you got to actually figure out what's important and then work together to get there. One of the best places I've seen this kind of symbiosis or working together is in the SOC analyst area. When the SOC analysts can actually do real analysis and threat hunting across IT and OT, and you don't have to stop and translate because, whoa, crap, I don't know what that stuff is. That is a much, much faster, more efficient, far better operation to do this job. Obviously, the flip side of that is incident response. When it does hit the fan and you got to do something about it, if your teams are kind of multi-skilled across all different verticals of your organization, you're going to do much, much better. Backup and recovery as well. Well, let's say you get hit with ransomware and you got to actually go into turtle mode and come back out, for example. How you resync the environment from that kind of hunkered down critical mode, if you don't do it right, you'll corrupt databases. You will cause bigger problems than when you were down. So coming out of this backup environment or this recovery state is just as important as going into it. The de-escalation components are just as key. And then resilience, as I mentioned, things like dependency analysis and islanding, and I'm going to say regulation again, not just because I'm a former regulator. Okay, cool. Got a few minutes for questions, if you have any. And that's my contact info. I'm on pretty much every freaking social. Whatever's left of the dumpster fire that's Twitter, I'm on there too. Yeah, but yeah, any questions, by all means, certainly open. And I'm also the Coin001 for the Beer ISAC. I want to give them a shout out. By all means, check out what we do. Sign the back. It's basically a network of professionals, and we're really all here to help. So if you ask anybody about Beer ISAC, they're going to help you. If you want to learn more about OT, you want to learn anything else, you'd be surprised how open and inviting and just bring you along with them as far as they can. It's a fantastic community. There's like an open Discord you can get on and some other things as well. It's not really like you can't go to a website and look it up, so you just kind of have to ask around because it doesn't formally exist. It's just a name. It's hard to describe. But what's that? Fight Club? Yeah, no, it's not that bad. Okay, cool. Thank you.
So, have you seen companies pass this test where I asked them, do you inventory your spare parts? Are they at the same inventory list? And are they checking CVEs against those spare parts?
Dan, that's a good question. Yeah, the short answer is yes. In the OT space, yeah, because they need to know exactly what's on the shelf. Even in some cases, we'll have like a spare EEPROM or FPROM, because if you got to put a program chip on, you can have it ready to go too. It's got to come to the latest configuration. So they'll take that, program it, and set it aside as well. We'll keep configuration databases for like PLCs and other settings or set points, so you can stamp a firmware on, and then you can stamp the configuration on and put it into service. So in the OT space, yeah, that's pretty common. Yeah. In the IT space, not as much. I've seen a lot more just-in-time purchase in the IT space. They think, well, if we need it, we'll go out and buy it. Or we've got a contract that, in theory, like Dell's going to show up in a helicopter and drop some servers out of the sky or something like that. But in the OT space, we don't have that as an option. So typically, if we've got a specific type of device, we'll buy extras on the shelf, and they actually get maintained in the same way. Well, in some cases, they're not always patched, because if it's a firmware-based device, it's really just latest firmware. Because some of them don't have an OS that needs patching. They just really get a firmware and a configuration set. But where it does need patching, yes. Yeah, like especially with the virtual spaces, they'll patch the virtuals and then push those over. Yeah. Any additional questions? Tony?
When you're trying to introduce cybersecurity concepts to your engineers, how far is far enough and what is too far? Where's the line between I want to provide some awareness and education to engineers and where we just need to pair them up with a smart cybersecurity person?
Another really good question. Donuts. Yeah. I has donuts. Now tell me about your SCADAs. Yeah, with engineers, they're usually really, really smart people. Like, they could just design you away if they needed to. What I've typically done is I found that pushing engineers doesn't really help much. And arguing with engineers is like wrestling with a pig in the mud. After about 3 hours, you realize they just love it. So I've found that it's slow, regular, interesting things to them. So find out what's interesting to them and give them little tidbits. and breadcrumbs, and after a while, they'll come to you and say, I've got an interesting problem. And then you can have a real conversation, because it almost has to come from them by creating an interest in them before just telling them how it is. Because in most cases, they have this mindset, and most of the time they're right, they can just engineer a solution every time. So it's more getting them to understand that, yes, you can, but there's a person out there that wants to use your system against you with malice involved. So you have to kind of make it their idea and let them come to you. It's a slow process, but it's by far the best. And you'll end up making a damn good friend in the process. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. Yeah, by all means.
Thanks. So I work directly in this space. I'm director of security for a maritime company, a large maritime company. Engineers don't give a crap about cybersecurity generally. So if you approach them with cybersecurity and you hammer them with cybersecurity, they're going to shut you down at some point. He had some really good points up here, though. If you talk about safety, you talk about increasing productivity, and you talk about reducing downtime, now you're speaking their language. So do a secure by design concept and go to them with the problems that they're trying to solve. How do I improve safety? How do I improve productivity? And how do I get more money into the company? Then you can do all your cybersecurity sauce in the background, and you're getting it accomplished, but you're helping them solve their problems. That's really the approach you got to have.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Anything else? Yes, coming. 2 minutes, all right. In under 2 minutes.
Okay, I think regarding this question we just discussed, I think the problem actually is with the engineering education, fundamentally, because I'm an engineering professor. What happened is, for example, chemical engineers, they were never told what is cybersecurity during the past. So I think the solution is still in education. So actually what I plan to do is educate our engineers on cybersecurity when they are in school. So this can be easily solved once they know. They need teamwork, they need to learn from the IT side, then they need to cross the aisle.
Thank you for doing that. It's desperately needed. Yeah, yeah, much agreed. Yeah, build it into the curriculum as much as you can. Anything else? One back there? Okay, and we got a little bit of time left. And anybody that wants to continue the discussion, we've got a safety panel going on in room 1 coming up too.
Hey there, long-time listener, first-time caller. So, I know you said engineering and OT people and IT people working together. Do you see the same kind of collaboration between them and physical security? So somebody breaks into a facility, did they break into the data center, that kind of thing?
Yeah, no. Fantastic question. My short answer is physical security is no longer physical security, because all of the physical security equipment is digital too. So physical security is now cybersecurity as much as you can call it anything else. So their servers should be part of the IT SMF plan. All the physical equipment should go through the same testing. I mean, IT equipment now, it's on IT systems. It's not physical anymore. And there's cameras and analytics and facial recognition and biometrics, and that's built in now. So what I'm seeing, those forward-thinking companies, physical security is part of security, because it has so much cyber in it now that it's not just physical. Time. We're out. Okay. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.